This is Trinity Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto Learned Forgotten Martial Arts. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto walked down the road, wearing only his clothes and carrying a wallet with very little money in it because he was nearly broke when he began his journey with no set destination. Naruto had been expelled from his former village, and while the village's higher-ups expected him to collapse in a state of depression and tears, Naruto did not. He didn't see this as a problem at all, but rather as an opportunity to start over somewhere else. Since his father had sealed the Kyuubi within him as a baby, those in the village had always seen him as the Kyuubi reborn. That's right, he knew who his father was, because you'd have to be an idiot not to notice that, aside from the whisker on his face, he was a miniature version of the man himself. He also had conversations with the Biju himself when he was younger, which solidified his belief. So, why was the son of the most infamous shinobi of his time mistreated his entire life? Because the higher-ups wanted what was his from the start, and because it was sealed up, they couldn't get to it without his permission. So they tried to beat the resistance out of him in order to turn him into a mindless weapon who would give up his inheritance without a fight. He had looked into it in his spare time to see how far up the chain the corruption went, and unfortunately for him, it went all the way up to the fire daimyo himself, who wanted his parents' fortunes for himself because he was a greedy man. And he, like the rest of the village, thought he was the weakling they wanted him to be, but that changed when he joined the squad assigned the mission to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha. Earlier. Despite Naruto's profound influence on Sasuke in the aftermath of the Chunin exams, he was powerless to prevent Sasuke from leaving his village and friends to train with Orochimaru because he had become tempted after seeing how powerful he was during the Chunin exams and being given the curse mark. Sasuke's decision to flee was precipitated by a series of events that rekindled his hatred for his brother and fueled his desire to avenge his clan. To do so, he must claim a great deal of power, which has become the focal point of his entire life. Sasuke challenged Naruto to a fight after Naruto returned to Konoha from his mission to bring back Tsunade to replace the previous Hokage, who had died during the Chunin exam invasion. They engaged in a heated duel on the hospital's rooftop, during which Naruto told Sasuke that he had never considered himself inferior to Sasuke. Kakashi Hatake jumped in to break up the fight just as Naruto and Sasuke were about to use their signature jutsu, Rasengan and Chidori, on each other, deflecting both attacks into adjacent water towers. While Sasuke's Chidori caused more damage to the front of the tower than Naruto's Rasengan, Sasuke was astounded to discover that the back of Naruto's water tank had been completely blown out by the power of his Rasengan. Sasuke realized he could have lost the fight and suffered serious injuries if Kakashi hadn't intervened. This only fueled Sasuke's rage that Naruto was growing stronger by the day and might be able to defeat him in battle. Sasuke had noticed Naruto's progress since the Chunin exams in the battle against Gaara of the Sand. Naruto only wanted Sasuke to acknowledge that he had grown stronger and was no longer a burden to the squad. However, Sasuke would never recognize Naruto because doing so would imply that he was weaker than him. Despite Kakashi's lecture on the futility of vengeance, which made him hypocritical because he hated Naruto because he blamed him for his sensei's death, the appearance of Orochimaru's Sound 4, with an offer of greater powers and yet another humiliating pummeling, pushed Sasuke over the edge. That night, Sasuke attempted to leave the village but was interrupted by Sakura, who then tried to persuade him not to leave Konoha. During this conversation, a sobbing Sakura confessed her love to Sasuke and begged him not to leave the village, but he turned her down. When she realized he was leaving the village regardless, she offered to accompany him to assist him in carrying out his revenge, but he declined. As a last resort, Sakura threatened to scream and alert the village guards if Sasuke left, and finally, having struck a nerve, Sasuke moved in a flash of speed from several feet in front of Sakura to directly behind her. He sincerely thanked her for everything she had done for him before knocking her out and laying her on a nearby bench before leaving the village. Shikamaru assembled a 5-man squad under Tsunade's orders, consisting of himself, Kiba, Naruto, Choji, and Neji. Naruto also suggested Shino, but Shino was on a special mission with his father at the time, so he couldn't be used in the mission. Sakura arrived just as they were about to leave and explained, while crying, that she had failed to stop Sasuke and had asked Naruto, who she believes is the only one capable of doing so, to do so as a once-in-a-lifetime request. Naruto made her a lifelong promise to return Sasuke to the village. They quickly caught up with the Sound Four, who were escorting Sasuke to Orochimaru. To defeat the Sound Four, no strategies were used. Instead, the team disbanded. The Sound Four did the same thing. They dropped people one by one, and Choji ended up fighting Gerb by himself. Choji was able to avoid defeat by increasing his chakra with 2 of the Akamichi clan's secret pills. Finally, he had to take the red pepper pill, which increased his chakra 100-fold but left him in a critical condition, usually resulting in death. Taking the pill slimmed him down because the extra calories were converted into chakra butterfly wings. Choji put all of his chakra and power into his fist and killed Gerb for insulting his best friend, Shikamaru, after exacting his revenge on Gerb for eating his last chip and calling him fat. Neji was then forced to fight Kidmaru. Kidmaru struggled at close range because Neji's Byakugan and Gentle Fist were too powerful to penetrate. Kidmaru ended up fighting from a distance, but the battle was deadlocked until Kidmaru discovered a flaw in the Byakugan. It has a blind spot behind Neji's first thoracic vertebrae. Knowing he would be hit in this area, Neji allowed Kidmaru to hit him with a powerful arrow to which Kidmaru had attached a chakra string for accuracy. However, Neji used the chakra string to damage Kidmaru's internal organs with his Gentle Fist. Neji then caught up with Kidmaru and closed his chakra points with his 8 trigrams. Kidmaru died soon after, but the fight left Neji in critical condition. Shikamaru was assigned to Tatuya, while Kiba and Akamaru were assigned to Saken and Yukon. Kiba and Akamaru did an incredible tag team on Saken, but Saken split with Yukon just as Kiba and Akamaru were about to land a devastating blow. Saken and Yukon raised their cursed seal to level 2, making them far too powerful for Kiba and Akamaru to handle. Meanwhile, Shikamaru, despite his entire prowess at devising strategies, was unable to kill Tatuya due to her sheer force. He used his shadow imitation technique on 2 of her summons, but she quickly dispelled them. Then he caught her in his shadow imitation technique, followed by his shadow neck binding technique, all while Akamaru was injured and Kiba refused to leave him. However, without Akamaru to perform their combination attacks, Kiba and Akamaru were forced to retreat, and Shikamaru was forced to use his shadow neck binding technique on Tatuya for the first time. Shikamaru and Kiba were finally ready to accept their deaths. However, before the finishing blows could be delivered, the Sand Ninja arrived to assist. Shikamaru and Kiba were about to die when they were aided by Tamari and Conquer, who had been ordered to assist the Konoha ninja. Saken and Yukon's ability to fuse with cells had no effect on Conqueror's puppets. When Saken arrived, he attempted to do the same thing he almost did with Kiba, but Conquer turned out to be his new puppet, Kuroari, injuring Saken, forcing them to fuse back together and Yukon to take control. Conquer then imprisoned Saken and Yukon within his puppet Kuroari. Conquer then used Karasu to stab them through holes in Kuroari, followed by a devastating and lethal combo, Black Secret Technique Machine One-Shot, which killed the brothers. Meanwhile, because Tatuya used sound to attack, Temari's wind was an obvious foe. Tamari employed her sickle weasel technique, which blew Tatuya away and severed her flute in half. Shikamaru took advantage of this opportunity to inform Tamari of Taiyuen's plans. Tatuya eventually fixed her flute and was ready to kill Shikamaru and Tamari, but Tamari used her summoning technique and the summoning quick beheading dance, which was able to kill Tatuya by destroying an entire tract of the forest, crushing the latter. Finally, Kimimaro, who was stronger than the entire Sound Four, arrived to assist with the escort mission. At first, he faced Naruto, but even Naruto's massive army of shadow clones was no match for Kimimaro, whose taijutsu skills were more than equal to Naruto's superior numbers. Naruto even used the chakra of the nine-tailed demon fox, but he still lost. During the battle, Sasuke emerged from the coffin he had been placed in to be escorted to Orochimaru, causing Naruto to return to normal and wonder why Sasuke was with the Sound 4. Naruto began pleading with Sasuke to accompany him home, stating that everyone was concerned about Sasuke. Unfortunately, Sasuke, who had fallen deeper into darkness, responded by cackling madly before fleeing, with Naruto calling his name to him. Kimimaro tried to kill Naruto but was stopped by Rock Lee, allowing Naruto to pursue Sasuke while Lee battled Kimimaro. Lee and Kimimaro were both taijutsu experts, but Lee was out of shape because he had only recently recovered from surgery. Lee became intoxicated after drinking sake he mistook for medicine and began fighting in the drunken fist style. Lee gained an advantage over Kimimaro as a result of his increased unpredictability. He had no idea what he was doing, who he was fighting, or why he was so drunk. After a while, Kimimaro was forced to perform his camellia dance, but Rock Lee appeared to be virtually invincible and delivered a devastating blow to Kimimaro. Kimimaro, seeing that he had no chance of defeating Lee in his current state, used his cursed seal level 1 to overpower Lee, manifesting his horrific ability to manipulate his bones at will. Not only that, but Lee began to calm down. Lee would have been killed if Gaara hadn't arrived in time and protected him with his sand. Kimimaro was clearly at a disadvantage because Gaara was capable of blocking all physical attacks and Kimimaro could only use physical attacks. Kimimaro, like the Sound 4, was able to overcome Gaara's defense and offense through sheer force. Kimimaro's bones were so strong that they simply pushed through Gaara's sand. Even Sand Funeral and other crushing forces couldn't bring Kimimaro down because he had created a bone film beneath his skin to protect himself. Kimimaro's final attack would have defeated and killed Gaara, but his terminal illness ended his life just before he could finish him. Naruto caught up to Sasuke and the two began fighting. Sasuke's cursed seal of heaven, which had been powered up by a pill given to him by the Sound 4, which was why he was in the coffin in the first place, gave him inhuman strength, which he used to reduce Naruto to ragdoll levels. Meanwhile, Sasuke reflected on his interactions with Itachi and his parents prior to the Uchiha clan's demise. It was revealed in these memories that Itachi obtained the Mangekyo Sharingan by killing his best friend, Shisui Uchiha. It was also revealed that Itachi encouraged Sasuke to obtain the Mangekyo Sharingan, which he claimed was the only way he could exact revenge on Itachi, by any means necessary, and this became Sasuke's motivation for killing Naruto, whom he claimed to be his best friend. Back in Konoha, Kakashi Hatake was briefed on the situation and dispatched his ninken, including Pakun, to find Naruto and Sasuke. Meanwhile, Naruto and Sasuke each unleashed the Rasengan and Chidori, causing them to fly backwards. Sasuke used his enhanced speed and strength to overcome Naruto and strike him with a Chidori after activating his cursed seal. Naruto managed to deflect the attack, but Sasuke, still determined to kill Naruto, attempted to strangle him, only to be thrown aside by a Nine-Tails-powered opponent. Naruto's enhanced abilities allowed him to easily overwhelm Sasuke while attempting to reason with him, only for Sasuke to reject his efforts. Despite this, Sasuke eventually admitted that they were fighting on equal terms. Sasuke's Sharingan finally matured at this point, allowing him to predict Naruto's movements and turn the tables once more. Sasuke, irritated by Naruto's persistence, knocked him out with Peregrine Falcon Drop. To save itself, the Nine Tails probably gave Naruto even more chakra, resulting in Naruto's one-tailed transformation for the first time, complete with the demon fox cloak that surrounded him. Naruto unleashed powerful short and long-range attacks with one arm of the cloak, which Sasuke couldn't match even with his Sharingan. Sasuke, feeling compelled, raised his cursed seal of heaven to level 2, leveling the playing field once more. At that point, both Sasuke and Naruto realized the cost of their respective abilities, but they both decided they had no other option. Sasuke revealed that their fight was taking place in the Valley of the End, and in order to end the battle, he forced the use of a third Chidori. Naruto created the Demon Fox Rasengan with one hand in the chakra of the Demon Fox cloak as a shell. After a brief moment, Sasuke's Chidori warped into the flapping Chidori. The two ninja collided their attacks. Sasuke, intending to punch Naruto in the heart, purposefully missed and targeted the gut instead, while Naruto scratched his forehead protector in response to one of Sasuke's insults. A black dome of energy formed around them, then dissipated, revealing the two ninja as their current forms, followed by their younger selves, who held hands and smiled at each other. Naruto emerged victorious after the dust settled. It had been a close fight, but Sasuke was unaware that Naruto had been secretly trained by the Kyuubi over the years. But he didn't come out unscathed because he wasn't invincible in any way, so he took Sasuke's unconscious body and started walking back to Konoha. When he arrived, he expected some sort of recognition for his achievement in bringing back Sasuke, but all he got was more hatred from the people for the harm done to him. Sasuke was admitted to the hospital, while Naruto was violently kicked out when he attempted to receive medical treatment from Sasuke's Chidori for the hole in his chest. Since he wasn't going to get any treatment from medical personnel, he returned to his rundown apartment and retrieved the first aid kit he stole a week ago after the store owner charged him a price far beyond what a simple med kit should cost. He took a needle and thread and sewed up the wound, allowing Kyuubi to heal it from there, and as soon as he was finished, his door was knocked on. He opened it, and the shinobi standing there violently shoved a scroll into his chest before disappearing. Naruto read the note and noticed that the council wanted to see him right away. He met Sakura on his way to the Hokage Tower for the meeting. "Hello, Sakura," Naruto said to his pink-haired teammate as she approached him. Slam. Sakura's fist collided with Naruto's skull, knocking the injured blonde to the ground. "I should have known better than to put my faith in you to return Sasuke-kun in one piece. You are the reason he left, as well as the reason he is in such pain. I wish you were dead. You don't deserve to live after what you did to him. I hope the council sentence you to death for being what you were, a monster," Sakura said before storming off in a huff. When Naruto entered the council chambers, things went from bad to worse. Naruto despised the counselors. They were mostly fat civilians who spent the majority of their time and money making his life miserable in some way. Worse, they were in the pocket of the villager shinobi elder. "Do you know we summoned you, Uzumaki Naruto?" Utatane Kaharu, the elder, inquired. "No," Naruto replied truthfully. But, if he was being honest, he knew what it was all about in the first place. "We're concerned about the use of the monster's chakra, also known as the Kyuubi's chakra, against one Uchiha Sasuke," Mitokata Homura, an elder, stated. "I didn't have much of a choice. Sasuke was wearing Orochimaru's curse seal, which made him appear inhuman. Not to mention that the Chidori hit me twice." Naruto expressed his displeasure. He should have anticipated this. He was well aware that they despised him simply because he was a Jinchuriki. The village council must have given the elders a large sum of money to get everything set up. After all this time, it was the perfect excuse to get rid of him. While that is understandable, Naruto Uzumaki, we have our concerns, and to be honest, we are concerned. What we're concerned about is your use of that foul monster's chakra. You even mentioned in your report that you felt like you were losing control and ascending to Kyuubi's chakra, which is filled with malice, hatred, and anger. How do we know the Kyuubi isn't having an effect on you?" Kaharu stated. "I am in command of my own actions. True, I feel those things when I use Kyuubi's chakra, but I have control over my actions." Naruto expressed his displeasure. He was aware, however, that it had fallen on deaf ears. "Is this the first time you've lost control?" Hamaru inquired. "No," Naruto sadly admitted. "Yes, you lost control against the terrorist Momochi Zabuza's apprentice, Haku, I believe, and you admitted you could have mauled Uchiha Sasuke then. However, I didn't," Naruto yelled. "Wait, Is this about Naruto using Kyuubi's chakra? Because I've seen reports on the Chunin exams and Naruto demonstrated some control over the Kyuubi's chakra. That's why he's under Jiraiya's tutelage. So Jiraiya can keep an eye on Naruto and prepare him to control the Kyuubi's chakra. Tsunade said with a rage in his voice. Naruto smiled, knowing that there was at least one person in this village on whom he could rely. At least, that's how it appeared to a third party. Will he Tsunade? For the first time, Shimura Danzo said. He's nothing out of the ordinary. He possesses no genuine talent. He's also proving to be more of a liability than a liability. True, he can draw out the beast's chakra, but he can't effectively control it. As Hokage, you must consider the best interests of the village rather than your own. My concern is what will happen if he loses control in the middle of the village. Did you not hear anything I said? Tsunade explained. Of course, but can you and Jiraiya truly control the boy? The fire daimyo disagrees and agrees that the boy is unstable. Danzo spoke in a monotone tone. Naruto saw where this was going right away. He didn't agree with it, but it was true. Danzo, you cretin. Tsunade snarled. Tsunade, Danzo is correct. There's also Akatsuki to consider. They are made up of 10 S-class criminals, according to Jiraiya. And one of them was Orochimaru, who murdered the Sandaime Hokage. Uchiha Itachi is one of them, and he nearly obtained the Kaibi. We are unable to face Orochimaru and Akatsuki. Kumogakure and Iwagakure are preparing to mobilize their shinobi. Things are very tense in the world right now, and another war is looming on the horizon. Konoha must take steps to protect its citizens. Kaharu stated. You only convened this meeting to formalize things. You've already made your decision. We have, and the boy has yet to persuade us that he can keep the Kaibi in check. Hamaru stated. As he said this, the civilian council members all smiled. Naruto Uzumaki, you are no longer a Konoha shinobi. You and your allies have been expelled from our village. You will have your chakra sealed and will be executed if you do not leave Konoha within 24 hours. With a sly smile, Danzo said. You can't do that because I'm the Hokage, and I decide who goes and who stays. Tsunade yipped. I'm afraid the daimyo of Fire Country has issued us executive orders to handle the situation as we see fit and in the best interests of Konoha. Uzumaki Naruto is a mentally ill Jinchuriki who is no longer fit to serve as a Konoha shinobi. If he survives Akatsuki, he might be able to become a farmer. With a smile, Danzo said. Naruto was taken away by the Anbu and placed in a sealing chamber where they applied a chakra-suppressing seal to him as well as something else that he was unsure of. All he knew was that it severed his mental link with the Kyuubi, preventing them from communicating. What was sad about this whole thing was that Jiraiya was the one who sealed his person, and he didn't have any guilt on his face as he did it, or when he had Naruto's name removed from the Toad summoning scroll. Naruto was then forced to return to his apartment to gather his few belongings, but before he did so, he used the last of his chakra to summon only one shadow clone to see Tsunade and bid her farewell. While he was gathering what little he had, the village celebrated his exile because it meant that the Third's law against him had been repealed entirely. As he walked towards the front gate, all of his old friends turned their backs on him, with the majority of them throwing trash and insults his way. While it hurt Naruto on the inside, it wasn't as bad as you might think because he had mentally prepared for something like this to happen at some point in his life. As he walked towards the gate, he was stopped by a slap to the face, delivered by none other than Hinata herself, who was enraged. How dare you, she snarled, to think that at one point in my life I thought I could love a monster like you. Simply die and do the world a favor. I've known about your feelings for me for quite some time, Naruto said, slowly walking past her as if she hadn't just slapped him in the face, and I thought we could have had a future together. But now I can only feel sorry for any man you end up with because you will most likely turn on him just as easily as you did me. Naruto didn't even look back to see her shocked expression, instead walking out of the village with a smirk on his face. His shadow clone had dispersed, and he was smirking because he knew the truth about why they did this. Jiraiya and Tsunade used the seal on his body, which was linked to another seal that was placed on all of the seals that could only be opened by him. It was programmed to activate upon his death, allowing them to rob him blind while also smearing his name into the ground. Tsunade had laughed about it because she had some gambling debts to pay off and the Senju clan had run dry because she had gambled it all away over the years away from the village, and it was mainly that hidden fact that brought her back to the village in the first place because she knew that as Hokage she could lay claim to the fortune of a dead clan with the permission of the daimyo, who obviously was on board with the whole thing because he wanted to. They only needed to wait a few days for the seals to dig deep enough to break free once the trigger was pulled. What none of them knew was that Naruto had known about his inheritance for quite some time. He'd used the night he stole the Forbidden Scroll as a distraction because he knew it wasn't a makeup test, and he'd sent a clone to take his place in the forest as he went to clear out both accounts as well as the scrolls within his rightful home. He placed them in a pile of small scrolls that he had hidden away for the longest time, but he moved it away from the village and into Wave Country, where it was safe. He had given it to Tezuna's family to keep secret from the rest of his squad. He had pretended to take a quick piss, but in reality he had gathered his scrolls and brought them with him. He had given the scrolls to them for safekeeping once their mission there was completed. While he was unable to use jutsu due to the seal on his body, he had denied those who attempted to rob him blind of their prize. So we've caught up to current events in Naruto's life, and he was wondering where to go because he couldn't go to any allied village without them hunting him down and killing him. It was then that Naruto made a decision that would lead him down a path of greatness unparalleled in history. He decided to go to Wave just long enough to retrieve his stashed scrolls, then sat down for dinner and explained why he was there in the first place. He told them everything about his life up to that point, which upset them and made them offer him a place to stay, but Naruto knew that if he stayed, Konoha would send Nin to kill him as well as anyone who got in their way. While he wasn't a seal master in any way, despite the fact that the art was in his blood, he did recognize a tracking seal when he saw one, so he planned to visit his ancestral home in the ruins of Whirlpool to see if he could learn enough about seals to remove what Jiraiya had put on him. So Tezuna gave him a boat and enough food to last him a while, and Naruto set out on his journey to his fate. Whirlpool. Naruto knelt at the ruins of his fallen clan and said a silent prayer for them. He then sat down for a quick meal before heading out to rummage through the ruins for anything useful. But, no matter how hard he looked, there was nothing that could help him because all texts had been burned and the scrolls he did find were messages rather than jutsu or seals. Naruto sat down in a huff as he watched the sunset at that moment. However, as the sun set, he noticed a campfire in the distance, which surprised him because there shouldn't be anyone else in these ruins besides him. As he moved closer to the fire, he noticed a lone figure sitting on the ground with his legs crossed. It was an elderly man with bulging muscles that seemed out of place on an elderly man like him. He had a long, gray beard that matched the rest of his hair on his body. He wore pants and an open jacket, allowing Naruto to see scars on his chest that, when viewed as a whole, formed the image of the Big Dipper. "Hello there, young man," the man said as he motioned for the boy to join him by the fire. "Please have a seat by the fire. I haven't had the pleasure of company in quite some time." "Who are you?" Naruto inquired as he sat down by the fire to warm up. "These days," grumbled the man as he took out a metal spike and skewered meat on it to roast over the fire, "it is common courtesy for the young to introduce themselves to the old before the old introduce themselves to the young." "Oh," Naruto apologized, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. "Naruto Uzumaki is my name." "An Uzumaki," the man said as he rotated the meat over the fire, "so what brings an Uzumaki like you to the ruins of such a place?" "I understand the desire to return to one's ancestral home as much as the next man, but there is nothing here for you." "Then why are you here, old man?" said Naruto, irritated that this man had basically told him that his quest was pointless. "I'm here because I'm looking for someone to teach my skills to take on my martial arts style so that it does not die with me." I've been looking for a student for a long time, but I haven't found anyone who can truly unleash the power that I can, so I'm afraid I'll never find one. Yet, somewhere deep within my soul, I felt a higher being telling me to stay here and my prayers would be answered. So, what's your story, my boy? Said the man as he handed Naruto some of the meat on offer and began to eat and converse. Naruto told him his life story leading up to this point in his life, just as he had explained to Tezuna's family not long ago, and he spared no details to paint the horrifying picture of his life that he could remember. Well, that is a sad story, the man said as he stood up and wiped the flecks of meat that had fallen on him from eating off of him, and while I wish to tell you my own story, I am afraid it will have to wait a little longer. Why is that? Asked Naruto, perplexed, as the man threw a sand-like powder into the fire, causing the light from it to burn brighter and revealing that they were surrounded by Konoha hunter nins sent by the Leaf to kill him on the Hokage's orders. I believe the answer to that question is as clear as day, the man said as he took a defensive stance and motioned for Naruto to stay behind him, and judging by the killing intent they are leaking, talking is not a solution to this particular problem. The man then assumed an unusual combat stance that captivated Naruto for reasons he didn't understand. The shinobi attacked the old man, but instead of backing down, he attacked them in retaliation. What surprised Naruto was that the old man only needed to touch his opponent with a single finger for them to bulge in grotesque ways before exploding into a bloody mess. The Leaf shinobi were disturbed by this after witnessing it the first few times, as he had gotten about a fourth of them from the start. They quickly attacked from a distance again, this time with shuriken and kunai. One even had the proper mind set to throw an exploding kunai at the old man, but he just shrugged it off as he walked towards them with determination in his eyes.
The shinobi at this point were stunned from the display of raw power that came from this man and made to retreat, but there would be none of that since the man made clones of himself, each charging energy to their hands, and in a split second, the shinobi that had come to kill the boy were themselves dead.
Naruto regarded this man with admiration in his eyes. Who are you? Naruto inquired for the second time. My name is Kenshiro, the old man said with a smirk, and I have chosen you to be my student. Kenshiro had left with his fiancée, Yuria, to find a future for them in the post-apocalyptic world that they now found themselves in after the nuclear war that had ravaged the planet and the death of his master Ryuken. Their plans to find a new home were thwarted when Shin, a rival from the Nanto Kosh Ken school, defeated Kenshiro and engraved the trademark 7 scars on his chest that would become a legend among those who came to fear the man who wore those scars, before kidnapping Yuria for himself. Kenshiro survived his ordeal and spent the next year roaming the wasteland seeking vengeance on the man who had kidnapped his fiancée. During this time, he developed the killer instinct required to survive in a war-torn age and befriended 2 young orphans, Bat and Lin, who accompanied him on his journey for a while before finding a home to settle down in star families of their own. Shin had assumed the title of King, and was the leader of the eponymous King organization, which he had encountered several times during his travels. After hand-to-hand combat with Shin's 4 generals, he infiltrated his capital city, Southern Cross, to settle things once and for all. Driven by his newfound strength, Kenshiro easily defeated Shin in their fight, but he was too late to save Yuria herself. Shin revealed to him before his death that Yuria had already committed suicide in order to stop his violent ambition. Shin leapt to his death from his palace balcony, as Yuria had done before him, refusing to die from Kenshiro's technique that he had used against him in their fight. After his vengeance was complete, the bereaved Kenshiro continued to travel the wasteland, never staying in one place for too long, as the curse of Hokuto leaves only chaos in its wake. He built a reputation among the people as a savior by destroying those who preyed on the weak and innocent, such as the Golan, Jackal, and the Fang clan. He also discovered that his 3 older brothers, all Hokuto Shinken practitioners, had survived the nuclear holocaust and had gone their separate ways to seek their destiny elsewhere. Jaggi, the second youngest, had long despised Kenshiro and was currently committing atrocities in his name in order to tarnish his reputation. It was also revealed that Jaggi tricked Shin into taking Yuria in the first place, as well as kidnapped and murdered Rei's sister, Irie. Kenshiro apprehended Jaggi and sentenced him to a gruesome death befitting his crimes. Kenshiro then fought his second oldest brother, Toki, who had gone insane after the apocalypse, but this was an imposter named Amoeba, a jealous rival of Toki's who was impersonating him to do to him what Jaggi had tried to do to Kenshiro. Rao, the eldest brother, had taken the title Ken-O, King of Fists, and aimed to bring order to the world by any means necessary, and had imprisoned the real Toki at Cassandra. Kenshiro was reunited with Toki after toppling the Great Prison with the help of Rei and Mamiya. He would go on to become a valuable ally to Kenshiro on his journey, intervening during his first fight with Rao as they were on the verge of killing each other, which would have caused a major power rift because many people would have tried to fill the leadership position if it had happened. Kenshiro then joined forces with Shu, the leader of a guerrilla group fighting Successor, the Holy Emperor and master of Nanto Ken, who enslaved children to build his empire. In their first fight, Kenshiro was defeated by Successor because his vital point attacks had no effect on Successor's body. Kenshiro was on the verge of death when he was rescued by Shu's son, Shiva, who gave his life to help him escape. In retaliation, Successor stormed the rebel hideout and executed Shu at the top of the Holy Pyramid. Kenshiro recovered from his wounds and discovered Successor's secret. His heart was on the opposite side and his vital points were reversed. Kenshiro was moved by Successor's tragic past, which he revealed to him while dying, and killed him with a merciful technique, effectively ending the Holy Emperor's reign. As the final battle with Rao approached, the mysterious last Nanto general emerged to challenge Ro's conquest. The general's identity was revealed to be Yuria, Kenshiro's betrothed who he thought had died. In reality, she was saved by the Nanto Goshase after attempting suicide at Shin's palace, and her survival was kept hidden from Rao. Kenshiro fought Rao with the ultimate Hokuto Shinken technique Musou Tensai, drawing on his profound sadness at having lost the love of his life to make Rao tremble in fear for the first time in eons and flee.
Ro, on the other hand, kidnapped Yuria during his escape and planned to kill the woman he loved in order to feel the same sorrow.
Kenshiro and Rao faced off in their final battle at the Hokuto Renkitsu, with Rao killing Yuria to unlock Musou Tensai as well, allowing them to fight on equal terms. Nonetheless, Kenshiro's greater understanding of life and death gave him the upper hand over his older brother and led to his victory. Rao had actually put Yuria into a false state of death when he realized she was terminally ill, so she awoke after the battle. Kenshiro spent the years following Ro's death living in peace with Yuria, whose disease had been subdued by Ro's power as a final parting gift from his brother. Kenshiro traveled with his fiancée for the few years they had together in bliss, but while they were happy to be together, they were saddened by Yuria's terminal illness, which prevented them from having children. So Kenshiro was eventually forced to bury his beloved, but not before locating a priest who performed the marriage ceremony so that they could be legally man and wife. To ensure that the burial site was never disturbed, he buried her on top of a mountain that no one else would dare to climb. After burying her, he knelt and said a silent prayer for her soul, and as he climbed down the mountain, he let one tear fall from his eye, the tear that fell hitting the ground and fertilizing the ground so that a single rose would appear on her grave in the years that followed. Kenshiro then continued his never-ending quest to assist those in need. He had sought out another to take up the mantle of becoming the Hokuto master as the years passed and his body aged, but no matter how far he looked, he had not found the right person to teach it to. He began to travel east for reasons unknown to him, and in doing so, he discovered something that genuinely surprised him. There was a massive wall that blocked off a section of the world for reasons he couldn't understand, so he set out to find the proper materials that would allow him to climb over the wall. Because there were no buildings or salvage near the wall, he had to make multiple expeditions to form not only a ladder to climb the wall, but also a ladder to get back down once on the other side. He eventually succeeded in building the ladders he required, and when he reached the top, he was astounded by what he saw from the top of the wall. Beyond it was a world unaffected by the nuclear war that had annihilated the rest of the world. So, once he was down from the wall, he carefully hid the ladders so that he could return to the other side in the worst-case scenario. He started his journey in the elemental countries, but no one understood him, so he wandered aimlessly because he couldn't communicate with anyone he met. Because no one knew his name, it was his defense of a helpless village against the forces of Iwa that spread his legend as the lone warrior. Out of the large group of Iwa shinobi who attacked the small village, only one survivor was a man named Onoki, who would later become the third Tsuchakage. He would have back problems for the rest of his life as a result of his fight with Kenshiro, but after seeing what happened to the other shinobi who had attacked alongside him, he knew he had gotten off lightly. He traveled the elemental countries for years, fighting anyone who dared to challenge him, and his luck finally changed when he arrived in Whirlpool itself. It was the Uzumaki on this side of the planet who helped him understand the state of the world by teaching him their language and the history of their founding, which went all the way back to the Sage of the Six Paths. In exchange for their assistance, he promised to return and train one of their own near the end of his life so that his style could live on. The Uzumaki began to regard him as a member of the family, and he even had some women try to seduce him because he was an Adonis in their eyes and would have gladly bared his child. They were shut down after he told them that his heart had only beat for one woman and she was gone, and while many women would simply try harder to seduce him, they understood and respected him for it. After fully comprehending the world, he embarked on his never-ending journey once more, as it had been his entire life to travel and he was not one to settle down anywhere. However, before he left the village, the clan head met with him and gave him the only spare key to the Uzumaki vault, which contained copies of everything they had made over the years, as it was always good to have the copies protected in the event that their village was attacked and burned down, along with the knowledge it had gained. He had no idea when he left that he would never see the Uzumaki clan again because the Second Shinobi War had begun, and that their deaths would be sudden and unexpected. Years later, he learned that the clan had been wiped out during the war, and he returned to the ruins of their people. He felt a deep sadness seeing the ruins of the once great clan because he believed that if he had stayed, he could not only have aided them and kept them alive, but he was now unable to fulfill his promise to them because they were all gone. So, with a heavy heart, he chose to live among the ruins for the rest of his life, constantly reminded that he could have stayed and helped. And there he remained, with the faint hope that one day another Uzumaki would return to their ancestral home, allowing him to fulfill his promise. And that is my story, Kenshiro explained to his new student as he sat near the fire. I remained here because I had hoped with a small glimmer of hope that there was still an Uzumaki out there to teach as I promised. So you'll teach me how to fight like you did against those shinobi not long ago? Hoped Naruto, believing that with that kind of power and skill, he could help many people while also exacting revenge on his former village. That is correct, the man said as he threw a blanket over Naruto because it was now time to sleep because his training would begin in the morning. Naruto wrapped himself in the blanket, and as soon as he did, he felt sleep hit him hard because he was unaware of how sleepy he was. Kenshiro examined his sleeping form, but he frowned because he felt the boy's energy was out of whack. He used his enhanced senses to see that all of the boy's energy was being siphoned into the seal that his old mentor had placed on him, and that the demon inside him was also contributing. He could only guess what it would do if Naruto was killed, but he wasn't going to risk waiting in case it exploded from too much energy. He charged energy into his fingertips and used them to puncture Naruto's chest. When he did, the energy began to flow back to where it belonged, much like when you draw a wet line on the concrete and then spill water near it. The water will then follow the drawn line. Naruto was jolted awake by the unexpected flow of chakra returning to him. The energy that had been stored in the seal for the past week burst through his body, causing excruciating pain. It caused his muscles to bulge out, his skin ripping open from the sudden growth, but just as quickly as it had been ripped open from the surge of power, it began to heal with the help of the demon within. But then another surge of power blasted out of his chest in a burst of crimson energy. The energy struck the ground and transformed into the Kyuubi himself, but not the massive-sized demonic creature that had terrorized the Leaf Village for years before being sealed away in Naruto. How is this possible? The Kyuubi wondered, sensing Naruto had passed out from pain. Naruto's body has changed drastically from what it once was, as instead of the weak malnourished kid who had just begun to gain some muscles, he is now as Kenshiro, with huge bulging muscles that have ripped his shirt right off his body, but his pants have at least stayed on because they are stretchy. While he was still free of the seal, Kyuubi sensed that a large portion of his power was still in the boy, and it was from that power that his wounds were healing. "I'm not sure myself," Kenshiro admitted as he gave the boy a quick once-over to ensure that everything was still in place. He smirked when he saw Naruto was still alive and well as the rapid muscle growth, because he would be able to train him much faster because the first part of the training would have been to help him build up the muscle mass that he would need to master his style. They could now skip the 7 years of intense training required to build up his muscles and get right to the style itself. However, my best guess is that when I rearranged the chakra within him back to how it was, the backlash caused the energy stored in the seal that was siphoning energy from him to break not only itself but also the seal that kept you inside him. "How about that?" said the Kyuubi as he lay down for the night, knowing that while a fraction of his former power was returning to him, he wouldn't be regaining the full amount anytime soon. "So, now that you've gained your freedom, what will you do?" Kenshiro asked as he sat down, noting that he felt no trace of killing intent coming from him and thus had no need to defend himself from the demon. "I'll do what I've done for years and stay by the kid's side," the Kyuubi said before curling up into a ball to sleep. "Why not take advantage of this opportunity to leave and live your own life away from the boy who was essentially your mobile jail cell?" "It's because the boy interests me," Kyuubi explained, "and because I've been with him since his birth, I've looked after him from the start. I saw a boy with so much potential who was being suppressed because those who cared for him were keeping him weak in order to control him. I protected him primarily to protect myself because if he died, I would die as well, but I grew attached because I saw a boy who had the potential to be great and wanted to be just that. So I helped him in any way I could. Now that I'm free, I'm curious to see where he goes and what kind of man he becomes, because watching such a thing unfold fascinates me. Then this training journey will be enjoyable for you," Kenshiro said as he closed his eyes for the night. "Indeed it will be," Kyuubi grumbled as he fell asleep. Village of the Leaves. The seals that had been set to protect what was rightfully his in the village all shattered at once as Naruto slept from the pain of having his seal altered internally. Those who had waited for this moment celebrated the success of their plan with a few drinks before setting out to reclaim what was never theirs to take in the first place. When they went to the bank to collect their ill-gotten gains, their triumph quickly turned to shock and rage because there was not a single cent left in either the Uzumaki or the Namikaze vaults. They began to be concerned about what they might find at the Namikaze estate, and when they arrived, they discovered that their concerns were justified, as they searched the entire estate and found not a single scroll, not a single shred of knowledge that they could use. It was then that they realized that all of their years of planning had been for naught and had been completely futile. Screams of rage could be heard from everyone in Fire Country as soon as they realized this. 7 years later, Naruto stood on the wall that divided the desolate side of the world from the side into which he had been born. He stood 7 feet and 5 inches tall, with bulging muscles that were clearly visible because his clothes matched what his master Kenshiro had worn for years, with the only difference being that his outfit had a hood that covered his head so you could see his hair, which he had cut short, Hokage Naruto haircut from Boruto, and a bandana that covered up all of his face except his eyes. He wore a pack over his shoulder that was filled with the scrolls he had taken from Whirlpool's vault in order to train in his clan's style as well as the Hokuto, because Kenshiro had explained that while he would be trained in his style, every master of it had developed their own style of it that had increased its power to what it was today. Naruto smirked as he jumped down from the top of the wall to the ground, using his chakra to soften the blow so that he didn't break his legs. After that, he heard a soft thud beside him as Kyuubi landed. While Kenshiro brought him to the worst part of the world for 7 years of training to help him toughen up against the worst possible things that life could possibly throw at him, and he took to everything he taught him like a sponge. Furthermore, because his chakra was flowing again, he was able to use shadow clones to master the techniques taught to him in a fraction of the time it took Kenshiro himself. Kenshiro was proud of how quickly he learned, and he died soon after his training was completed, but not before asking Naruto only one favor as he handed him a crudely made map. "Bury me alongside my wife." Those were his final words before passing away, and he carried his body up the mountain that Kenshiro had climbed years before and buried him next to his wife, as he had requested. He said a silent prayer, just like Kenshiro, and used a seal to encase the rose in a glass bubble, ensuring that it would last for many years. After that, he returned to the elemental nations to begin his own journey of vengeance. He made it back, but he had to deal with several gangs of bandits along the way, whom he killed using the techniques his master had spent years teaching him. He had learned to work with his partner Kyuubi in such a way that the Inuzuka clan would be envious because they were in perfect sync. The Biju, on the other hand, had spent years sealing himself within him, so he knew how the boy thought and moved accordingly. He had grown to the size of a miniature horse, but he could shrink down to a size that was invisible to the naked eye, which was useful because he could sneak attack anyone who tried to harm his friend. He could also siphon energy from Naruto to grow to his maximum size, but only for a few minutes at a time. They traveled to Whirlpool and entered the vault again, just as he had done 7 years before. He took the time to carefully place the scrolls back where he found them because, while there were no other Uzumaki to claim them at the time, he planned to have children in the future to continue his bloodline, so he would keep these scrolls in pristine condition to pass down to his children in the future. And now that everything was in place, he set out on the first destination he wanted to visit on his revenge journey. Country of the Waves. Village of the Leaves. "What do you mean the spring daimyo turned down the marriage proposal?" yelled an enraged Tsunade. Jiraiya, who was also standing in front of her desk, had a solemn expression on his face. "It's exactly as I said. When I arrived, she ripped up the scroll with the proposal written on it in front of me," he informed her. He isn't usually one to take things seriously, but the loss of all their alliances and trading rights in the last 7 years was an exception to that rule. Oh, no. The marriage proposal between her and Sasuke was critical to the survival of the village. "We will need allies in the coming war," she growled and bit her thumbnail. She approached Jiraiya and inquired, "Do you know who else I should contact here? We need allies or resources to sell in order to hire people to help us." "I'm sorry, but I don't have anything." Jiraiya lamented, "But now that Naruto has been killed, no one wants to help us. Even Taki is unwilling to assist us because it would be suicide for them to support us in the upcoming war with Iwa and Kumo. We'll have to send out scouts in the area to see if they can track any movement from the enemy's forces," Tsunade said as she sat in her chair, sighing. She sits up straight and becomes serious. "Killing the brat was by far the worst plan we had in a long time. If only he was still alive today, I'd be able to get my hands on that brat and wring his neck for all of this while beating out the location of the funds he stole from us years ago," she sneered. "You could be right, but at least my spy network spans the elemental nations, so we'll know when the enemy makes a move against us." Tsunade smirked at Jiraiya's obvious boasting. The past 7 years had been difficult for the entire village because when word got out about Naruto's exile, the people he had helped outside of the village were outraged. But their outrage grew 100-fold when they heard the rumors about Naruto being murdered on the orders of the Hokage, and because no one could find him anywhere, they assumed the rumors were true.
And now that all of their allies and trading agreements were gone, their enemies saw this as the perfect opportunity to strike at them, and both Kumo and I would join forces to kill them once and for all while plundering their village.
Tsunade sighs and waves her hand indifferently. "Simply find out anything you can that will help us in some way." "In that case, how is Sasuke's training with the Toads going?" she inquired, knowing that he had signed his name in the Toad's contract as a sign of good faith, telling him that it would help him gain the power to kill his brother in the future. But there was another secret to the offer. It was also a simple way to bring back the best if he tried to flee again, because Jiraiya could simply reverse summon him. It's moving at a snail's pace. Iron Pa have begun his advanced technique training as well as his senjutsu training, but he is still working hard to master it. I can't even count how many times Pa had to stop him before he turned into a statue. Everyone is pitching in to assist, but what? She asked, her gaze narrowed at her fellow Sannin. Jiraiya chuckled awkwardly, scratching the back of his head in an obvious display of nervousness. In the first place, the Elder Toad doesn't seem too keen on us training the kid. He's even babbling about some new prophecy that he can't seem to get enough of. It's all he's willing to talk about these days, and it's really starting to irritate me. What did he say about this new prophecy? Slug Sannin inquired. If you want it word for word, he said that the man with the power to bring order to chaos will perish, but his power will be passed on to another. That the one who is given such power will become even stronger than his master, with a shrug told Jiraiya he wasn't too concerned about what the Elder Toad said because he was getting on in years and was probably going senile in his old age. Tsunade, on the other hand, felt a sense of dread, but she wasn't sure why she was feeling this way. She, like Jiraiya, didn't believe in superstitious warnings from a 500-year-old toad, but something about it felt off to her. She returns to talking about the current issue, pushing the prophecy to the back of her mind for later consideration. When the daimyo hears about the proposal failing, we'll have serious problems on our hands, she said, interlocking her fingers and taking a serious expression. I knew I should have sweetened the deal in some way so the bitch would bite. So, what comes next? We won't last long if he cuts our budget. And the other villages are already planning to take advantage of our weakness, Jiraiya expressed his concern. There's only one solution that can help us with our problems, Tsunade smirked. Oh? And what brilliant plan do you have in mind? Jiraiya inquired, listening intently to how she intends to assist the village in regaining its former status as the strongest of the 5 villages. We take over Wave Country. And here I thought you had a good plan, Jiraiya sighed, disappointed. Nowadays, Wave Country is pretty much the embodiment of trade routes. If we take over the country, we will have complete control over global trade. It will not only boost our economy, but also our morale. Plus, once we took over, we could finally change the name of the bridge to permanently erase the memory of the brat, with a smirk, she explained. That's all well and good, but what about the other villages and countries? Will they not retaliate if we suddenly invade one of the neutral countries, which you have just stated as the main center of trade in the elemental countries? Jiraiya inquired, his tone slightly nervous. He can't be blamed because he doesn't believe Leaf can handle so many countries and villages against their own, even during their strongest years. Tsunade frowned at his reply. Allow them to retaliate. We'll already have control over Wave and leverage with all the civilians by the time they find out. They won't try if they know we'll kill them. Fine, he said as he walked towards the window to jump out of. I'll head out to check in with my spy network and make sure that everything is ready by the time you get the necessary forces for this plan of yours. And maybe get some research done before heading out, he thought to himself as he jumped out of the office with a perverted grin. Tsunade took an empty scroll from her table's drawer and scribbled down a few teams that she would need to send to attack Wave. She won't need many because Wave only has a dozen or 2 hired samurai who shouldn't have too much trouble with a few squads of Chunin and Jonin. Wave, 1 week later. What has the world come to these days? That's an awesome bridge, and they named it after the demon brat. As he looks over the large bridge they are guarding, he spat out a leaf Chunin. Along with him are 3 more Chunin whose sole responsibility is to ensure that no one enters or exits the village without the permission of a higher-up. I understand what you mean. I can't wait for it to be dubbed the Great Uchiha Bridge. It has a more appealing ring to it, a second Chunin remarked. I disagree, a cold voice from behind the 2 distracted Chunin said. Behind them is a large figure wearing an open jacket that showed off his abs, making the female of the group blush slightly because she had to admit that he was very well built. The other two Chunin noticed the man's sudden appearance and jumped back to get a better look at him. The other two Chunin are less fortunate, as their torsos detach from their lower bodies after the strange man pokes them in the chest. They bled out while screaming in agony because their bodies had recently ripped in half across the torso. The remaining Chunin pulled out kunai to fight the stranger, but both appear nervous because he had just killed two of their comrades in a second in an overly gruesome manner. They are trying to figure out how he got so close to them without them seeing or sensing him coming in the first place. Since I left, the leaf has become extremely sedentary. What a shame. It will make killing you less difficult, the strange man spoke as he focused his full attention on the two remaining Chunin. He raised his hands in a combat stance they were unfamiliar with, leaving them unsure what to expect. So they charged him together in an attempt to kill him, but all the strange man did was flick the woman in the head while shoving the man back hard. Kumiko, return to the village and summon reinforcements. I'll keep him at bay while you're away, ordered the Chunin's male. Are you certain you can deal with him? He appears to be quite powerful, she said this with uncertainty, but the male responds with annoyance. Simply go. I got it, he stated his determination. She nods and dashes down the bridge to warn the besieged village of wave of the strange man. You're already dead, the man said as he watched Kumiko pause in mid-step and her body bulge out in a bubbling manner. She then violently exploded the male Chunin who was still alive, much to his horror. The other Chunin exclaimed, Kumiko. Arrogance. You honestly thought I'd let her go so easily? You are unquestionably a leaf nin, the stranger chuckled before rushing forward faster than the male Chunin could follow with his eyes. The male Chunin felt his hand bend against his will and grabbed his own throat, tightening around it. Please have mercy, the man begged, his voice barely audible. I'm not sure why you're begging me for mercy when it's you who's killing yourself, the stranger said as he continued to walk towards the village. He heard the snap as the man's neck broke and continued onwards to become the town's hero for the second time in his life. And as he walked towards his destination, he couldn't help but grin because this was going to be so one-sided.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.